dramatic? Raise your hand if you did. Okay, thank you. Some of you are lying very politely. I appreciate that. But let me encourage you to be coachable and actually try some of these ideas that sound really weird, because I promise they work. If they didn't work, I wouldn't share them with you. I would just, I would tell you things that are other things that are true. But this one really works. And I do want to take a little bit of time to continue our journey into sales and sports psychology. Some of you had a chance to watch the World Cup, and that was exciting if you're French. But for the most part, I wanted to kind of delve a little bit more into this whole notion of mental toughness. So if you need a heading today, I'm going to call this Champion Mind Gyms. Champion Mind Gyms. So I'm going to tell you about how champions, I mean, like real life champions, build out their mind gyms and what they say about their mental progress, how they do it. Because if you can do the same thing, you will win. All right, now I got to tell you a quick story, which is not funny or that interesting, but it's a nice segue. I was at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, which is in the old days was renowned, well, it still is, for its football program, not soccer, American football. And they have an alumni association that has literally spent millions of dollars on this strength center. It's not, you're thinking, well, it must be a pretty nice workout center. No, this is a strength center that's capitalized. And I had a pass once with a friend who was on the track team, and he walked me into this strength center, and it was so cool. Everything was in marble. There was this really cool, massive area where guys lifted weights, and there were like sculptures of Atlas and Hercules and Zeus, very muscular people around the walls. And then they had lists of the coaches that were coaching the football team. And they had a whole list of like leg coaches. Evidently, these guys have dedicated their lives to legs and developing legs. Another one there were shoulder coaches. And then on the side, there were even neck coaches. Now, I can't imagine going home to your family at night saying, well, how was work today? It was great. I really developed some necks. But evidently, that was very important to have great necks. So they had spent all this money to develop the physical side of their football players. Now, at the time, I hadn't delved into this whole mental side of life and sales and leadership. So I didn't ask if they had a mind gym for their athletes, but I'm sure that they worked on that visualization process too. I'm going to go through and talk about probably 5 or 6 different major athletes you may have heard of. And I did some research and found out what they said about how they prepare. And I want you to take what they said and transfer this to what you do every day. Okay? So try to take some notes on this. First, since I just swam 2.5 miles today with my master swim team, I'm going to talk about Michael Phelps briefly. And a quote from his coach. So this is Michael Phelps. His coach said this. He coached him since he was 12. He said, Michael Phelps is the best I've ever seen, and he may be the best ever in terms of visualization. He said, Michael will see who he's up against sitting in the stands at the Olympics, say. And then he sees that person in the water. And then he goes through different scenarios in his mind. What if things go well? Here's how I'm going to swim. What if things don't go well? Like what if his suit tears a little bit or his goggles break? Did anybody watch the Olympic Games in Rio? Raise your hand, Rio. Remember a few years ago? Okay, a couple of you did. In Rio, Michael Phelps was swimming the 100-yard butterfly, 100-yard fly. And when he dove in, the second he dove in, his goggles popped off for a second and filled with water. So he was absolutely swimming blind. So you're thinking, well, that would just ruin your chances of winning gold. Well, it was a setback. And when he finished, he tore off his goggles and threw them on the side. He was mad. He won by like one fingernail, like a couple hundredths of a second. But what he'd done in his practices is he had this database in his mind, okay, in his mind. So when he swims Everything is perfect. And if it's perfect, he'll go with that perfect scenario. And then if he has to make a change, if something goes wrong, if something happens to come up, he's already pre-programmed into his nervous system how he's going to handle it, which is completely amazing. So having a plan for you guys in every possible scenario should give you confidence, like Phelps. That would be a good thing. Because if you can do that, if you've thought through all your what ifs, then you can concentrate on selling and you don't have to worry about anything else because you know how you're going to react. Okay? So that's my first tip. And here I'm going to give you 4 or 5 questions today I want you to think about. Here's the first one. Do you think through all the scenarios of your work week? Do you think through all the scenarios of your work week or when you're in turf? And the second part of this question is, do you have contingency plans? Okay? Do you have a plan? Like, what if your train is late? Or what if 2 of your clients don't show up or they're late for your appointment? Or what, if things go wrong, do we just melt down or do we already have a plan so we can stay focused? All right, good. Let's talk about basketball. Anybody like basketball? DeVal guys? Yeah, all right, here you go. Some of you may have seen LeBron James play in the NBA finals recently. Now his team lost, but LeBron James, if you know him or you've seen him or you Google him, he is just a beast. I mean, he is just a huge, unbelievable basketball player. I mean, MVP all the time. And his game, obviously he's very physical, but he is much more mental than physical. He said, when you see the way we lost, mental mistake after mental mistake, those hurt more than anything, and you can't play better. You must play better mentally. He said people get so caught up on the physical side of the game, but we lacked the mental side, and we've got to can't continue with that. So here, let me give you a little note-taking bit here. Champion athletes become the best at what they do because they work hard physically and mentally, but they thrive under pressure. So write those words down somewhere. They thrive under pressure. They have a mindset where nothing is impossible. When he gets the ball to hit the winning basket at the buzzer, he has no doubt the ball is going in the basket. So his second big thought is he stays positive. He stays positive. And when he does that, it eliminates the doubt. It gives him confidence that he can hit the basket. All right. He says having a positive outlook also enables people to cope with stress and anxiety that's associated with pressure situations. So here's my second question to you. Thinking about LeBron. Do you thrive under pressure? Okay. When there's pressure, when you're behind on your calls, when you haven't been getting those appointments like you wanted, does that kind of buoy you up and motivate you? Or does it crush you? What happens when you're behind? Do you thrive or do you fold? And secondly, just like LeBron, do you have and can you maintain a positive mental attitude during each week? Okay? So how do you stay positive? Talk to each other about this. How do you stay positive? If you know somebody positive in your office that seems to have it together mentally, then ask them, how do you do it? That is a great question. How do you do it? All right. Let's talk about tennis. Anybody tennis fan? No, that's okay. I'm going to talk about tennis. There you go. We got a fan. I'm going to talk for a second about Roger Federer. You heard of Federer, Swiss guy? Yeah. Federer, well, he lost recently in Wimbledon. He kind of went down early, but he's ranked number 2 in the world right now. And he said his career finally went big when he learned not to panic on the court when he was down or under pressure. And here's his big idea. He said now, rather than giving up like he did in the early days, he, quote, hangs in there and hopes for the best when he's behind. Okay? Those are big words. You should be writing that down. Do I hang in there even though things are not going well? He said that all of his success went back to that one decision, that I'm not going to give up like I did early on, but I'm going to hang in there, keep playing as hard as I can. He did not begin to build his great tennis record until he first said he began believing in himself. So you got to write that down. Believing in yourself. So he realized in order to be a champion, he had to first start to think like a champion. And then that made all the difference to his career. Okay. And he said this is important. He said, lots of people think the opposite. He said, most players think the opposite. Most people believe that once they start winning lots of matches, or in your case, once you guys start making lots of sales, then the belief comes in, and which will help them win more matches. He said, that is not how it works. I agree. That is not how it works. What he found out, what he discovered, it's the other way around. The secret is you have to first create the belief, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, before you begin winning lots of matches or closing lots of sales. So how do you increase your belief? You've got to develop your belief by practicing it regularly in your mind gym. Okay, he doesn't talk about a mind gym, but let me tell you about how he thinks. And if you can change your thinking, then you can change your outcome, okay? Which is what you want to do. Here are a few things he did to increase his belief. One, he regularly visualizes himself winning. Does that sound familiar? He takes time during the day to visualize himself winning matches. He runs these are his words. He runs powerful, vivid, emotional images of success through his mind. And he sees himself playing brilliantly in all parts of the game. So the same thing with you guys. Do you see yourself winning at every part of the sale? You know, from the very initial call and your tone and your confidence to pinning them down, closing the sale. I mean, do you see yourself, or do you say, well, I'm not very good at this part. I'm not really good at rapport. Well, that's what you've got to change. You've got to picture it differently. Okay. Second thing he says is you never talk yourself down. You make sure your inner dialogue that constantly is going on in your mind is positive and upbeat rather than critical. Most of us are really good at critical. We focus rapidly on what we did wrong, but he would say, no, focus on what you did correctly. Here's another thing he did. He says, reinforce your belief by reminding yourself of your past victories. Regularly, which means daily, if not more than once a day, remind yourself of all your past victories rather than just forgetting about them like a lot of players do. Okay? So that's what he calls that the Federer method of the mind game. Okay? So if you can apply those three things to what you do, you know, you're not playing a tennis match, but if you simply refuse from now on to ever give up and you hang in there and you keep playing and see what happens, you'll do really well. I promise. I had a group of salespeople here at my house yesterday at what we call a Sunday meeting. And it was a group of Southwestern University booksellers. They were selling books. They were in their 10th week of selling. A lot of them were first-year people. And a lot of them weren't even, you know, I said, well, how's your group? There's only like 15 of you. And the organizational leader said, well, we started off with about twice as many people, but a lot of them quit. And a lot of them violated that one rule that Federer talks about, just simply hanging in there. You know, there was a guy that talked to me yesterday and he was just like, I have this problem, I have this problem, and I got this issue, and I can't do this, and I can't deal with these types of people, and I can't collect money. And I mean, it was just like this whole mishmash of stuff. And I just said, hey, Tyler, you're supposed to go through this. It's good for you. You have to go through this. It's part of your growth process. Suck it up, hang in there, keep working. So I didn't give him any like secret keys to success other than I said, here's the grind. Enjoy. But that's what he needed to hear. You know, it wasn't like I was going to say something magic. So here's the third question for you guys. How can you increase belief in yourself? How can you increase your belief in yourself? How can you just hang in there and keep selling, keep dialing, and see what happens? Okay? Because it is very discouraging, especially when you first start, because you're just not good. And there's all kinds of variables to deal with. All right, let's talk about another sport. Who likes soccer? Anybody soccer fan? Okay, no? Okay, well, one. So some of you may have seen the World Cup deal. I'm not going to talk about France or Croatia, but I want to talk for a minute about Wayne Rooney. If you've ever heard of him, he's a DC United soccer star, and he consciously visualizes. And I got this quote. I think it's really interesting. He says, part of my preparation is I go and ask the kit man what color we're wearing the next day. If it's red top, white shorts, white socks, black sock, whatever it is, he understands, okay, this is what I'm going to look like in a uniform. He says, then I lie in bed the night before the game and visualize myself scoring goals or doing well. And, you know, he was one of the guys that had the great over-the-top kick, back, you know, kind of the Pele. I don't know what you call that thing. He was great at it, but that's what he visualized. He said, I thought was real interesting. He said, you're trying to put yourself in that moment and you're trying to prepare yourself to have a memory before the game. That's kind of cool. You're having a memory before the game. So in selling, I'm trying to have a memory of what my week or my month is going to look like before I actually head to turf. I like it. He said, I don't know if you'd call it visualizing or dreaming. He says, but I've always done it my whole life. That's why I'm good. So Wayne Rooney, a few thoughts there. The best players in soccer tend to have exceptional visual memory. That's right out of the article from beastmodesoccer.com. All right. So I've got question number 4 for you. The 4th question is, do you visualize yourself winning? Do you visualize yourself winning? And the follow-up question is, how vivid is your picture in your mind gym? Okay? Is it vivid? Is it fuzzy? Is it black and white? Is it in color? Is it really crisp? Can you zoom in and zoom out? Can you pan? You should be able to do that in your imagination. So you have to visualize yourself doing that. I want to talk about one more athlete, and this is from American football. If you're familiar with the New England Patriots, you know who I'm going to talk about. Yeah, Tom Brady. And some of the women are just going, I don't really care about this. And I know that's sexist to say that. But anyway, I know that it's not, you are guys not like, yay, the Patriots. Let's talk about them. But I want to talk about Tom Brady. You've heard of Tom Brady. Who's heard of him? Okay. I want to tell you a little bit of his story, and this should be encouragement to you. Because Tom Brady didn't start off being the ultra mental guru champion that he is now. But in 2000, he said the New England Patriots and their quarterback coach chose me as the NFL's 199th pick. Did you hear that? There were 198 players picked ahead of him. He said, if you do the math, that means I was passed over by every team in the National Football League between 4 and 6 times. You might be discouraged. Have you guys remember back in school when you played dodgeball or some game at school and everybody picked? And if you weren't, if you were sitting in the back at the end, it was like, okay, I'll take Tom. You were like, oh God, I picked last. Well, that's what Tom Brady felt like, which is amazing. So instead of letting that discourage him, he said it motivated him to target and improve his deficiencies. So that's a thought for you. And this is another thing I liked what he said. He said, much of the success I've been lucky enough to have in my career, I owe to a lifelong will over skill mindset. Write that down. Will over skill. His will was more important than his skill. And he said, I had to train my brain to work out as hard as I was physically, mentally. All right. He calls it his cognitive training program. And so let me tell you about it. It's called neural, Neural, neural priming, which sounds really cool. But that's neural priming. So he was priming his body through his mind to form new habits. Okay. He said to create stronger, faster connections in our brains, we need to practice a habit or skill or behavior again and again. And the more we practice the habit, it becomes automatic. Okay, so let me give you a little bit more on Brady because he talked a lot in this article. It says when it comes to winning or losing games, there's one thing that Brady said matters more to him than the outcome, and that's the amount of effort he put in. Effort. He said, if I don't play my best, why am I disappointed? Because I could have, I should have played better, I should have done better, worked harder, prepared more. In the end, for me, it's less about the outcome than it is about whether I gave it my best. So that's kind of important. And let me give you one more thought from Brady, and I want you to write this one down because I think it's pretty important. He said, I found that my setbacks brought out the best in me. Today, I think of them as gifts. I think of my setbacks as gifts. I fought hard to get where I am today, and he's done well for himself, lots of Super Bowls, which means I know what it means to fight hard. He said, when you're in a Super Bowl game and your team is down 3 touchdowns, like they were against the Atlanta Falcons, and the clock is running, mental toughness is what makes the difference. And they came back and won that game amazingly. So question 5, the last question is, do I look at my setbacks as gifts to learn from? Do I look at my setbacks as gifts? Are those negative experiences I have when I'm discouraged, do I look at that as a teacher? Or am I just like, ugh, I'm so discouraged? Here's the second question on number 5. How can I develop a will over skill mindset? Will over skill. I mean, how many people in sales have I seen in my lifetime who were not as talented? They didn't know as much, but man, they were determined. They had desire. What Mordatley called a burning desire to be successful. And when they had that, you know, that was 10 times more important than knowing every little close and every little nuance and every little getting all the words just right technically. Not as important. Okay, so we looked at some athletes today. I'm still encouraging you to build your mind gym out and to be imaginative and to take time each day to think through that. Next week, we might close out the mind gym series because some of you might be getting tired of it, but I do have a PowerPoint I'll attempt to share with you and go through a couple of examples and give you some more thoughts about mental toughness. Let me close with a quote, a little excerpt from Max Lucado. You may have heard of him. He's a very famous author who, like many of us, sold books with Southwestern back in the day. But so this sounds a little like Augmentino, but let me give it to you. It's called Today I Will. And don't try to write this down. I'll send it in my email along with the recording. It says, today I will make a difference. I will begin by controlling my thoughts. A person is the product of his thoughts. Yes. I want to be happy and hopeful. Therefore, I'll have thoughts that are happy and hopeful. I refuse to be victimized by my circumstances. Optimism will be my companion and victory will be my hallmark. Today, I will make a difference. I will be grateful for the 24 hours that are before me. Time is a precious commodity. I refuse to allow what little time I have to be contaminated by self-pity, anxiety, or boredom. I will face this day with the joy of a child and the courage of a giant. While it's here, I will use it for loving and giving. Today, I'll make a difference. He goes on to say, I will not let past failures haunt me. Even though my life is scarred with mistakes, I refuse to rummage through my trash heap of failures. I will admit them. I will correct them. I will press on. No failure is fatal. It's okay to stumble. I will get up. It's okay to fail. I will rise again. Today, I will make a difference. Last thought, I will spend time with those I love, my spouse, my children, my family. Today, I'll spend at least 5 minutes with significant people in my world. 5 quality minutes of talking or hugging or thanking or listening. Today, I will make a difference. So there you go. Some thoughts about attitude and the mentality, how critical to have your brain focused and in order. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Any comments that were triggered in your mind where you were like, oh, I remember this one? Or think about your background. Some of you did lots of sports. Anybody do an interesting visual warm-up before you actually competed that you want to share? Okay. And everyone's just staying muted saying, well, someone else will talk, or not at all. Okay, fine. Doesn't hurt my feelings. I have lots of confidence. I like myself, and I'm going to have a good day. So you guys go and do the same. I look forward to seeing you at our meetings coming up. So keep working hard, enjoy the process, enjoy setbacks, and keep working out in your mind gym. Okay? That's all.